What is going on, everyone? Happy Thursday. Happy Halloween. Welcome into GC Live at the Buzzer with your host, the one, the only, yours truly, Mr. Jack Veltri. Thank you so much, Jack, for having me in. I'm just messing. But anyway, what's going on, everyone? Thank you guys for all tuning in to today's episode of GC Live at the Buzzer. We are going to be doing our season previews of both men's and women's basketball for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But before we get started, got a slew of guests coming in to join us today. We are going to be talking about our sponsors for the day with Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans right above me up first. So if you are like me, you're looking for an apartment right now, or you're actually looking for a home right now, but maybe you're living in an apartment, or you're just looking to buy a home in general, or you need help with mortgage, give our guy Clint a call, 803-422-6797. You can also go with the NMLS number for him, 71597, or you can go to clinthammond.com. He is a lifelong Gamecock fan. He's been in the mortgage industry for a very, very long time, and he's been a huge supporter of all our GC Live programs. And, of course, he's a Gamecock fan. So you're getting everything you need there with him. He's the right guy to go to. So definitely check him out if you're looking to purchase a home or you need help with your mortgage, anything like that. And that will definitely be a great step to take with him. So want to thank Clint for being a really great sponsor of all our GC Live programs. And Ben says Arden Conyers all SEC run starts now. Yeah, it's definitely possible. We'll have to see what happens. He's a very special, talented player, but again, a lot of season to go, and we'll see what happens. And then Jeff 2001 says started slow and turned it on in the second half. Absolutely right. So definitely liking what I'm seeing there from this team yesterday, but we'll talk about that in a bit. We're going to have Markeshia Grant up at 10:45 this morning, and then we will have Elijah Campbell on with me to talk the men's side of things at 11:30. So two guests today. Like I said, Markeshia Grant, she'll be up first talking women's hoops with me at 10:45 here in a little bit. And then we're going to be talking some men's hoops and what we saw last night in the exhibition game against Worcester in an 86-60 win for South Carolina with my guest and friend from 107.5 The Game, Elijah Campbell. So before we get started with all that good stuff, we got another sponsor to talk about, but I have a third special guest that will be joining me. So let me go get him real quick. Hold on one second. What's your favorite scary movie? No, I'm just messing. Got the ghost face costume here, so thought that'd be funny. But let me talk to you guys about good friends over at Prize Picks. So Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They are a fantastic way to get involved in the game. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And of course, you watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Obviously, the World Series just ended, but there's still NFL, college football, college basketball starting soon, NBA, NHL. The options are really endless in terms of getting involved in the game. So if you definitely want to do so, go to prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. Use the code GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. And we want to thank PrizePicks for being a wonderful sponsor of all our GC Live programs. And so, so I definitely probably needed the Jeopardy music while I was gone for 5 seconds there, bringing in my good friend Ghostface from Scream. And I know if you're listening to this later on, I know we're going live right now, but if you're listening to this later on a podcast platform, you probably won't get it. But for those of you listening, I was dressed up as Ghostface. So I thought that'd be cool to have a little fun here on Halloween. Of course, let me take my Ghostface costume off real quick. But how's everyone doing today? Hope you guys are having a wonderful day, just like I am. It has been fantastic weather outside, I will say, for one. And I got the Halloween shirt on, the Halloween Mickey Mouse shirt. So, we're vibing today, having a great Halloween so far. But I hope you guys are having a very wonderful Halloween too. Stay safe out there. If you got trick or treaters and all that, be safe. But definitely don't eat too much candy like I will probably be doing later tonight. So, definitely going to be a great day. But we are also here to talk about the main thing today, which is season previews of South Carolina men's and women's basketball. Like I said before, I will be having on two guests today. No Ghostface the rest of the show, but he thank you to Ghostface for coming on the show, even if it was for a 5-second cameo. I really appreciate it. That was a hard guest to get. Now my other two guests, I got Markeshia Grant here at 10:45 a.m. and she'll be talking all things women's hoops. Probably gonna be going for about 30 minutes, talking about the women's team. They obviously are coming off a great season last year. Can't get any better than winning a national championship. Am I right? Absolutely dominant season last year. And now they're looking to defend their title. And it's going to be hard because, winning 2 titles in a row, it's very tough, obviously. What UConn did back in the day at the start of the 2000s and even into the 2010s, it's very hard to do. Can South Carolina be that team? I wonder. And I definitely do think it is possible. I think they're the team to beat this year. Until proven otherwise, I think they are the best team in all of women's college basketball. And then obviously on the men's side of things, they are coming off a 26-win season last year, getting back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2017. And yeah, we'll have to see what happens. It is going to be a very interesting season, I think, from the men's side of things, because look, in their history, consistency hasn't been their thing. And that is, historically speaking, facts don't care about your feelings. They haven't made the tournament in back-to-back years since the 1990s. That says a lot. However, this is a different era, it feels like. It feels like this team has got the pieces to get back to the tournament and maybe do a little bit more. Obviously, you're losing some guys, and we'll dive more into this later, of course, at 11:30 and talk all things men's hoops. But for right now, it's like you're losing Michi Johnson, Talon Cooper, BJ Mack. Obviously, you're losing Stephen Clark, a veteran leader. So you're losing a lot of veteran guys. At the same time, though, you replenished and got probably better, to be honest, in some cases. You brought in Jamari Thomas, who I know didn't play great last night. But at the same time, I think he's going to be a key piece of this team. And then you brought in Nick Pringle, who's definitely going to be a monster for South Carolina this season. And then just overall, man, I think they got enough guys coming back to where it's like the team feels probably about the same for the most part. And obviously, run Cam Scott, and that is huge. And you have Arden Conyers, who we talked about a little bit earlier. He's also going to be a huge piece this year. So we're going to see what happens. But I definitely like where we're at with the men's team right now. And look, last night was not the most perfect game. I will say that straight up. Like the score does not indicate how close that game was at times. This was a 2-point game in the second half. There were times at this game where Worcester was leading in the first half. And eventually, talent just overtook. And South Carolina kind of ran away with this game in the second half, thanks to a 26-6 run at one point. And again, I'll save the rest of the details for later. But this was a game where South Carolina played a little sloppy at times. But again, you go back to I've brought this up a few times now because I've seen some people, especially on the Insiders Forum and stuff, kind of worried about what this team looked like yesterday. Here's my counterpoint. I know it's different, but at the same time, last year, South Carolina was down in their exhibition game against Wofford 34-17. 34-17. They ended up coming from behind and winning by 3 points in that game. And I'm sure everyone was worried about that game and stuff. South Carolina ended up winning 26 games last year, having a record-breaking year. Everything just went right for them. So, look, it's not an indication of will the season be the exact same because South Carolina had a close game at one point against Worcester yesterday. Not necessarily. And look, South Carolina ended up winning by 26 points. So there's not much to worry about there. At the same time, though, like it is a little concerning that they didn't shoot amazing from 3-point range. They missed more than half of their free throws. A lot to dive into, and Elijah Campbell was at the game yesterday as well in the press box area. So we'll have a lot to talk about from that. And then we're also just going to be talking about the season in general. So if you guys have any questions, of course, Markeshia will be joining me in just a few minutes here, and really looking forward to having her on. She helped out a little bit with Gamecock Central earlier this year during the women's basketball the NCAA tournament run. going all the way up until the national championship. So really appreciate her doing that, obviously. So you definitely don't want to miss that here at 10:45 in a few minutes. And then we'll talk all things women's hoops for 30 minutes after that. And if you guys have any questions for her, myself, anything you want to talk about, I implore you to drop any comments you have in the comments section. And while you're at it, give a thumbs up on this video to show your support. Would really appreciate it. It just shows that you guys are enjoying this type of content. Obviously, this is a pretty new-ish show. We've done basketball shows in the past, hard foul, all that. It's the same show, just me now hosting and under a new name. So definitely give it a thumbs up if you enjoy what you're seeing today. And then, like I said, 11:30. We will be talking to Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game. It should be a lot of fun doing so. Just waiting on Markeshia to join me here in just a few minutes. So with the women's team, I'll take a little bit of a look into them for right now. Who's excited for Monday? I think Monday is going to be a great day for the women's team, and we've got Markeshia joining me in just a second. See if we can get her on here. Let's see. So hold on 1 second. Trying to get this figured out. Hold on. Stand by. Let's try to get this figured out. Hold on 1 second. While we're waiting on Markeshia, we will talk about some women's hoops here for a minute before we get going. And look, the women's team this year, like I was saying, Monday, the season starts. I'm really excited to see how this team does this season. I think they're going to have a great year overall. Look, Michigan in Vegas to open the season. Isn't that kind of cool, to be honest? Like getting to go out to Vegas. And I mean, if any of you guys are going to the game on Monday, drop it in the comments. Let me know. Would love to hear if you're going or not. And we'll see. Oh, we got her now. What's going on?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. First off, I'll dive right into some questions here. What do we think? We thinking back to back this year?
Yeah, honestly, I think this team is better than last year. I know we lost Camilla, and she was a presence and a force for us in the paint, but we've added Joyce Edwards, we've added Adele Talk, we've added Miriam from the transfer from Arkansas. And so I just think that just helps us tremendously in that position. But also Sanaya Fagan and Chloe Kitts have gotten so much better. So I feel like we just have a dominant team this year. So I'm really excited about the season.
Yeah, definitely. And there should be a lot to be excited about. Obviously, coming off a perfect season last year, beating Iowa in the national championship game. It feels, I mean, it's only a few months ago, but it feels like it's been yesterday since it happened. So just, I guess, overall thoughts. I mean, what are you feeling about the schedule, the way this team has looked through the two exhibition games? Obviously, Memphis and Clayton State. What has impressed you about this team so far? Do you have any concerns or anything or questions you need answered still?
So honestly, coach always schedules hard throughout the non-conference just to prepare them for conference, but also for postseason. So I'm not surprised with the schedule that they have this season. And she's always intentional about scheduling like HBCU schools. So I'm not surprised that she played Clayton State. But essentially, I'm just excited to see how they start off against Michigan, opening on Monday. That'll be a good test for them. I know Coach at Michigan always has a really well disciplined team, and she runs a lot of good offense. So I'm excited to see us against them. However, I just feel like we're going to get better as time go on. We're going to get better on the defensive end. But what I've seen so far, like I'm very impressed. I feel like they are better than the point they were at the beginning of last season, which says a lot. And it says a lot about what they did over the summer. They got in the gym, they stayed at school, and worked together. And as you can see, like everybody has elevated their game. I seen Pow Pow shot is quicker. than last year, and I didn't think it could get any quicker than last year. But you can see she's thinking about releasing the ball quicker, which is great. Raven Johnson is going to be a constant for us defensively and running the offense. So I'm excited to see how she grows over the course of the season. Malaysia Fulwali, she is thinking the game. She's slowed the game down. She's making intentional passes. She's taking what the defense give her, and I love that for her going into year two. Tessa Johnson. What can you say about her? She's a sniper. She wear number 5 for a reason. So I'm excited to see how Tessa does this year. Breezy Hall. She's gonna be a constant. She's gonna guard the best player on the other team. So she understands what that challenge is. So I'm excited to see how she grows over the course of the season as well. And I know she has aspirations to play at the next level. So I'm sure coach is going to challenge her day in and day out in practice. So I'm excited to see how she gets better.
Now, the great thing you just mentioned about all those players, they're coming back this year. The
Yeah.
entire team,
So, yeah.
unless I'm missing someone, I think I probably am. I think there's probably one player I can't remember off the top of my head, but they are returning literally just about everyone. And I think that's the
Yes.
great thing about this team because you look at 2 years ago when they lost,
Mm-hmm.
they lost the freshies, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they got majority of this team coming back. Just how important is it that number one, they went through last year with what I think many considered a younger team.
Mm-hmm.
They went out there, had a perfect year, won the national championship. Now everyone's coming back and they're loaded again this year. Just how important is that for what they can do this year?
So I think it starts in the summer. Coach was intentional about making sure they were there in the summer, and building that chemistry. That is so important when it comes to winning a championship because the season is a long season, and so you're gonna be challenged all season long. And so I think Coach does a really good job of preparing them for moments, and you can see that with the schedule that they're gonna play. They're going to play really good shooters that can, knock down shots off of, down screens, back screens. And then you're going to play really fast teams like Memphis. Memphis was a challenge for them off the dribble drive. And so she's just going to show them, get them experience in different ways that people play because it'll help them along the way in conference play and into postseason. So I think Coach Staley is the best to do it. So I think they're in good hands. And like I said, they've gotten better than last year. So that's the scary part is that, they were really good last year and they've gotten really better. So I'm excited for them.
Yeah. Now I asked Pow Pow this question yesterday
Hmm.
because she was on 107.5 The Game with us. Where is one area you feel like this team is better in this year compared to last year? I know we only have a few game sample size and the regular season hasn't even started yet. But from what you see and what you watch and what you
Hmm.
hear, what's the one area you feel like this team is definitely improved in?
So of course, I'm gonna say like the depth. Last year we had a lot of depth, but again, you added Adele, you added Joyce, you added Miriam in that position, in that 4 or 5 position. So we just have a lot of depth, and I think that's going to help us down the line. A lot of schools don't have that depth, so and that's always been a strong point for South Carolina. So I think that's the one area that they definitely got better in.
Definitely. It seems like they got a lot better. And with that depth, they've got a lot of young talent that you mentioned before. And the one name I want to bring up to you, Joyce Edwards. What I know. She's a heck of a player, isn't she?
Uh-huh.
She's going to be a solid player for the next however many years she's at South
Yeah.
Carolina. What can you say about her game and what sticks out most to you about the way she plays?
Well, I've been watching Joyce since she was in 7th grade. So just to see her growth from now into then, it's been amazing to watch. But I just feel like Joyce is like a sponge. So she's gonna, be a knack on defense. She's gonna get rebounds. She's gonna get, buckets. She's gonna defend as hard as she can. So I just feel like she can play 1 through 5. And I know coach is going to challenge her to get the best out of her. And that's with any, of our post players that you've seen in the past, and Camilla and Aaliyah and Asia. So I think Joyce is going to be that next one, to get that feat of what the bigs are that come through South Carolina. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for Joyce.
Yeah, she definitely should be a really solid player for this team. Now, I'll ask you just a more broad question. I mean,
Mhm.
who is like one player on this team? If you can narrow it down, because look, all these girls, they could probably be starting at any school of their choosing, but they're at South Carolina. You can only start 5 players, and so some players are going to have to take a seat and play a little bit less minutes,
Mhm.
but they're still great players. Who is one player on this team that you feel like we don't talk about enough that really could be a valuable piece to the puzzle this season?
So I think Sanaya Fagan could be the very valuable piece because she's going to start. She's a senior, and coach is always going to go with experience. But just her, just seeing her growth over the last 4 years, coming off the bench, being vital for us in the Final Four run. I just think it's her time to go ahead and show like here's what you can do, and so I think she's going to be that X factor. But then in contrast, I think Chloe Kitts also could be that X factor for us because she's very skilled. She's very skilled. She can knock down the mid range. She can get to the basket. She can defend. But she's gotten stronger this year, and as you can see, she's bringing the ball up the court, making decisions in transition. So I'm excited to see those two players.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, with the season at hand, I mean, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's a lot of tough opponents on the schedule. It gets
Hmm.
right out of the gate. You get Michigan in
Hmm.
Vegas on Monday. And then on Sunday next week, the day after the Vanderbilt football game, it's number 9 NC State in Charlotte, and then at Clemson, at UCLA in LA. Iowa State top 10 team, Duke top 11 team. I mean, just what is it about Dawn and the way she schedules, and just how important would you say it is, being someone that played at South Carolina and stuff,
Hmm.
to have to go through the, I guess, rigorous is the right way to put it.
Gauntlet. It's a gauntlet.
It's
It's
a gauntlet,
definitely
yes.
it's a gauntlet. Yeah.
'Cause I
Hmm.
mean, honestly, like, and this has been the case for years now, where Dawn
Hmm.
has scheduled the tough teams out there, and it's gotten to the point where teams probably don't want to play against South Carolina just because it's like you know what you're getting every time out. There's a good chance you're not going to be able to win. And so I think teams probably run away from that challenge, but others seem to embrace it. So what would you say about how important it is to have the schedule that they have this year and in years past?
Yeah. So people come to South Carolina to be pros, and so the way that she schedules is consistent with a pro schedule. Night in and night out in the WNBA, people are battling. So I feel like that's why she schedules the way that she does, and that's why she has the roster that she does. And so, if the first 5 not working, you can go with the next 5 and the next 5. So it's kind of layers to it in that, but also development and preparation for the postseason. I think she always just has that in mind when she builds a schedule and just to test to see where they are from a team aspect because they play against the highlighters every day, and so that's a measuring stick, but it's not more so like what it's going to be like in game day mode. So I think that's why she scheduled the way she does.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
it doesn't get easier once you get into SEC play because the
Yes,
SEC that's a gauntlet right there.
yes. And they got Texas twice, so
Oh man,
welcome back, Vic.
yeah. Right. Oh my goodness. But
Mhm.
I feel like, I don't know if you could really pinpoint one specific game that like stands out on the schedule as like the must see matchup. Because I feel like anytime South Carolina is playing, especially on national television, not on this
Mhm.
SEC Network Plus stuff. I mean, it's must see basketball. And I feel like for me, LSU on January 23rd at home, just based on what we've seen over the last few times these two teams have met. I'm not going to get into what has gone on because obviously it's
Right.
great games and stuff. But
Mhm.
if there is a game that sticks out to you on the schedule, what would you say it is and why?
I mean, Texas. I mean, Vic and Coach Staley have had battles throughout the SEC for years, and they went to the Big 12. Well, he left and went to the Big 12, and now they have to come back to the SEC. So, I think it's going to be a defensive battle. However, I do feel like South Carolina is more powerful on the offensive end, but we also play defense. So I think those are going to be the games to watch. They always have great scouts on each other, so I think that's going to be a competitive game. But also UConn. That's going to be a good game because UConn has to come back to South Carolina because they canceled that 1 year. So that's going to be a monumental game as well. Just to see Paige back playing in Colonial Life Arena against our team. So those are the two games that I think stick out to me.
Yeah, and that definitely should be a great game. I mean, like all these games on these schedules should be great. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention on February 2nd, which is 2-2, Asia
Mm-hmm.
Wilson, and the number
Yes.
retired, the jersey retired. Just how cool is it to see that? And just what can you say about Asia and the way she came to South Carolina, developed, and then obviously she's a superstar at the next level?
Mhm. Yeah, I watched Asia grow up playing travel basketball. So, I'm so happy that she decided to stay home and make history, bring her first national championship to South Carolina. And, it just speaks to what her legacy is. And so why not retire her jersey? She deserves it. She had a hell of a season, WNBA season. She was the WNBA, MVP. She led her team to, to a fourth seed. And so I just feel like she deserves all of the accolades and all the awards that she's getting. So why not a better time for her to get her jersey retired on 2-2. So I'm excited for her. And she just does so many great things for the community. I love A. I'm thankful for A. Yeah.
Yeah, and a big part of why Asia's been able to get to where she's at undoubtedly has to be Dawn Staley, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And for someone that obviously played at South Carolina, played for her, and have been around her for so many years now, what is it like being around Dawn Staley? What is it like playing for her? Can you just kind of describe what that is like?
Yeah. So as a player, like you want to play for the best, and so like during the time that I decided to go to South Carolina, like I knew Coach Daly was the best point guard, and I was recruited to play point guard, and so why not go play at the University of South Carolina, even though it wasn't a time that everybody was choosing South Carolina, but I knew that she one day wanted to win a national championship, so I wanted to be a part of that foundation. And so I decided to go to South Carolina. And then here we are, 2017, she wins her first national championship. But I also feel like when I decided to go to South Carolina, I was going to have a friend for life. And that's what I have. And if any player that you talk to, they'll tell you like, you can call Coach Daly for anything. She'll be there for you no matter what. And so it's a rare thing in college sports. So if you have something like that or if you experience something like that, you hold on to it and be grateful for it. So I'm grateful that I decided to play for Coach Daly 14 years ago in 2010. And our relationship is amazing. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, most definitely. Is there anyone better than her? Like, where is she at in terms of the goat is a tough word to throw around because
Oh man.
in terms of women's basketball, though, I mean, she was a great player back in the day. The highlight tape speaks for itself. And now as a coach, I mean, she's doing really, really great things here at South Carolina.
I think she's 101. I mean, I'm always gonna say like Pat Summit was one of the greatest and go down as one of the greatest, but also Gino with his 11 national championships. But if we talking about like creativity, being a trailblazer and all of those things, like Coach Daly is second to none. Like she's transformed the way that you think about women's basketball. And she's been at the forefront of like social justice issues and all of those things. So I just feel like she's one of one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, maybe this is a better question for her, but from your perspective, what are like the qualities you as a player need to have to be able to play under Dawn Staley? Like, obviously, I'm sure she demands excellence. Like, this is not an accident that South
Mhm.
Carolina has won as many championships as it has. It has had as much success as it has had. But I feel like there's a certain, level of demand and, play that you need to have. What do you kind of say that you need to, what does it take essentially is what I'm trying to get at.
So I think it first starts with character. Like she's always going to recruit character, especially from the student athlete, but also their parents. She's big on like parent support and parents having good character, but also being a disciplined person. Like she always says the disciplined person can do anything, and so that sometimes mean you do things you don't want to do. I think that's a big thing, a part of it too. But also like you got to be able to play. Like you got to be able to, get after it. I mean, as you can see, like she recruited a lot of All-Americans, but they still got better. Like, so it's not like, you're just coming in and playing off talent that you already had. Like she's literally elevating your talent when you come to South Carolina. So I think that helps in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, character, discipline, and be able to play and have good parents.
Most definitely.
Mhm.
Just a few more for you here. On the
Mhm.
season as a whole, it's going to be a real grind to get back to the Final Four, national championship. I mean,
Mhm.
it feels like they should be able to, but again, it's a long season. A lot can happen. And I feel like there's probably going to be some sort of target on their back just because, as if there wasn't already. I mean, they're the defending champs, haven't lost in so long, it feels like. How do you feel like how do you deal with pressure as a player? Like, what do
Mhm.
you kind of do to just not to block out the noise, I guess, per
Mhm.
se?
So I think it starts with like having a great support system, and coach has a great staff, from coaches to support to academics to athletics. And so with that, I think they do a really good job of helping them just navigate what they need to focus on. So that's school and basketball. Sometimes, things, come out on social media, but I think they do a really good job of just not being able to compartmentalize all the things that are going on, and just focus on what they need to focus on. So again, it's the support system that they have throughout the season that helps them focus on what they want to do in the end, which is win a national championship.
What are your three keys? If South Carolina is getting back to winning again,
Hmm.
what are three things you need to see from this team to get to that point?
Oh man, you put me on the spot.
I know, I know, I know. It's a
Three
hey, look,
things.
you have a million
Okay.
options to pick from, though. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Three things is stick to the game plan. Like coach is always gonna give them a game plan, keys to the win, and just follow the game plan and just listen to what her and the coaching staff have to say. Also be disciplined on offense and defense. Like look for the best shot and get those stops. So I think that's another thing. And then also the third thing, have fun. Like sometimes I feel like the season can get long, and so you just really like you go through mental lapses. So I would just say continue to have fun.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. So I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah.
Prediction for the season. Got to ask, how far
I,
is this team going? And I know I'm sure it's gonna be national championship, but
yeah.
how far is this team going? And here's the real question: do they go undefeated again?
Whew. That's a good question. Their ceiling is national championship, and I think their low is a national championship. Because I feel like they got all the pieces and then you added so much more talent. But also, do I think they go undefeated? Yes. Yes. Why not? Why
Why
not? Yeah, why not? I mean, I feel like, other teams gotten better across the country, but also South Carolina got much better as well. So I just think it comes down to them, deciding what they want to do. I think they choose their own destiny.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. Now, before I let you get out of here, I do this
Mhm.
with all guests. Did you want to just tell the people, shameless plug, where they could find you on Twitter, social media, and then whatever you got going on, anything you
Okay.
want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Yeah, yeah. You can follow me, find me on. I don't like to call it an X, but you find me on Twitter at Savvy5, and Instagram at Savvy5. I just have a lot of personal development and team building, sessions going on right now. But you can, and if you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on those platforms and keep up with what I'm doing. So I appreciate you having me, Jack. This was really good. I'm looking forward to the season, and thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Would love to have you back on again throughout the season. So definitely thank you so much for previewing the season, and we'll see if they go undefeated. I feel like
Yes.
you got the right energy for them to
Yes.
go that way. So
Yes. Thank you.
awesome. Thanks so much.
All
Appreciate it.
right. All right. Have a good one.
You too. Really appreciate that. That was an awesome, awesome interview with the one, the only Markeshia Grant from South Carolina women's basketball. And she also helped out at GamecockCentral.com during the Final Four championship run this season, or I should say last season. So, really appreciate her joining us. That was an awesome, awesome interview. Really cool to be able to talk to her. I'm going to plug her social media in here if you want to follow her. So, give me 1 second, and then we're going to be talking some men's basketball here soon. And actually, I will be talking a little bit of what my thoughts are on the season in a minute, because obviously that's probably what you guys came for, right? Let's see. So there we go. Just plugging that in right now. That is Markeshia Grant's Twitter info, and it's the same for Instagram, like she said. So really appreciate her hopping on. And yeah, I definitely don't disagree with her. I do think this team is probably better than last year because they have another year of experience under their belts. They are loaded from top to bottom. They brought back nearly everyone. And I mean, they lost Cardoso, but like other than that, they're solid. Like again, the schedule's always gonna be tough, right? You get what 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you get Michigan and Clemson too, so 6 really good teams. Not to mention, you also have to go to Fort Worth to play TCU, and you play South Florida, and you get Purdue. I mean, this is a tough schedule, obviously, but South Carolina is built for it in non-conference play, and then obviously SEC plays a gauntlet. Like she said, it is a tough slate. You go to Texas, you play Texas twice. You go to Alabama, you get OU at home, LSU at home, which is a big deal. You get UConn at home, and then you're going to have to end the season. I feel like this is a really interesting matchup to end the year. Home versus Kentucky on March 2nd, senior day. That's going to be really cool to see. As for me, how do I feel like this team's going to do? I'm going to be honest, and don't call me a hater, whatever you want to say. Look, I call it for what it is. I just feel like I thought maybe last year South Carolina would have had at least one bump in the road, right? Because I know they had a few close calls in some games that maybe they should have lost, like the SEC tournament game against Tennessee, where they had the prayer for the forever to three, the real prayer from 3-point range with Cardoso hitting that shot. That was insane. That probably, speaking there, maybe should have been a loss, you can argue. They had some other close calls during the year. Obviously, they played LSU a few times. That was some real gritty battles. But they went undefeated, went perfect, and won the title. This year, I think they're going to get back there for sure. However, I do think at some point we're going to see this team be tested, and they're going to have to respond. I do think there's probably one loss on the schedule, and I don't know what it is. I feel like playing Texas twice is a different animal, and having to go to Austin, like you get Texas at home on January 12th, then you go to Austin on February 9th. That might be a tough game, and that comes off the heels of going to Georgia too. So, I mean, look, South Carolina is going to be fine. I probably see one loss on the schedule though somewhere, and look, it's tough to go undefeated. Like as good as South Carolina is, as good as Dawn Staley is as a head coach, as good as the talent pool is, it's tough going undefeated. So I do feel like at some point they probably drop a game, but we'll see what happens. I do think they'll end up getting back. Obviously, they're getting back to the tournament. 1 second. No. But I will say, with South Carolina, getting back to the national championship is the goal, right? Like getting there, winning it all again, the key. And I do feel like this team is built to do it. So I'm going to say South Carolina finishes probably with 1 or 2 losses. And if it's a second loss, that maybe 3, that means they probably didn't win the title. But I think for my sake of predictions, I'll say they end the year with maybe 1 to 2 losses and they win the national championship again until proven otherwise. Until we see another team step up like South Carolina and meet the challenge, I think this is South Carolina's time to go back to back. There's no Caton Clark out there anymore. There's, you know, like obviously the times have changed. Like, there's no Angel Reese anymore, obviously. Uh, I think this is going to be a year where South Carolina's got more experience under their belts after a great season last year where everyone thought they were going to be youthful and maybe couldn't get back to the title, but they shocked it. Well, I say shocked, but like they went undefeated. And that's crazy that they were able to do that, even with how much talent they have. Going undefeated is such a hard thing to do, let alone in a very long women's basketball season. But the journey to get back to the top begins on Monday, November 4th, against Michigan, out in Las Vegas, Nevada, 7:30 p.m. on TNT and True TV. I know everyone here that's probably watching on this stream is going to be watching that game with much anticipation. And so this has been really fun to talk all things basketball. And we'll be diving into men's basketball now in a few minutes. Obviously, we'll be joined by Elijah Campbell. We're going to try to get him on a little bit sooner if he has the time. Otherwise, we'll see him at 11:30. We'll talk hoops for 30 minutes. So with men's basketball, I will start breaking down a little bit last night. As I mentioned earlier in the show, 86-60 win for South Carolina men's basketball. The first game of year 3 of the Lamont Paris era. Look, I mentioned it before. This game last night was a little tough at times to watch. Like, did they play their best? No. Like, I think Worcester had some really good moments in this game where they hit some tough shots and they played really close basketball for a good portion of time. But there were also times where South Carolina just locked in and absolutely dominated. Like the final 4 minutes of this game, the Fighting Scots did not score a single point. Like, that is impressive. And there were a lot of points in this game where it's like they would go 5-6 minutes without scoring. And that allowed South Carolina to kind of pull away and close out the game on a 7-0 run, which is really good. And again, the key run in this game was a 26-6 run. I think it was right after Worcester got within 2 points of taking the lead or even tying the game. And South Carolina went out on a 26-6 run, and that was the difference in the game. And the Fighting Scots were never really able to fully recover after that. And the second half was just a really dominant effort. I mean, yeah, you ended up outscoring. You won both halves, which is good to see. You won the first half. You went to halftime 44-32. Second half, you outscored them 42-28. So definitely a really solid effort. I think Worcester is going to be a pretty good team this year at the D3 level. And I know everyone's going to look D3 school like, oh, South Carolina, like what's going on? But at the same time, like this is Lamont Paris' alma mater. So I understand it from that standpoint of doing that. And I think it was a good challenge. Like he said in his post-game press conference yesterday, it definitely is a challenge playing against this team because they fight, and that is what you want every day. So South Carolina is going to kick off the 2024-25 season on Monday against North Florida at Colonial Life Arena, 7 p.m. Should be a really good game, hopefully. Good way to start the year. Jeff says, before anybody asks, well, I'm waiting on your question, but thank you. Thank you for doing this, Jeff. Shout out to you, my man. Appreciate it. Like Jeff said, the North Florida game will be on SEC Network Plus. I know there are going to be people out there asking about it repeatedly. And if it helps you, Monday, I will have my how to watch, what to watch for story out. In those stories, I include what channel you can find the game on. Like, read the story, and you will figure out, okay, the game is on SEC Network Plus. So, and I will tweet it out too. So definitely, you will have your opportunities to see where this game is going to be at and all that, and you will get to be able to watch this team play, which is going to be really cool. But in case you didn't watch last night, if you were not able to go to the game because there was no TV broadcast, I know Derek Scott and Casey Manning were doing some sort of like stream or whatever broadcast. So if you watched that way or listened, that's awesome. But if you didn't get to go to the game, We'll be breaking it down for a little bit more here. South Carolina had 4 scorers last night, finished with double digits. Colin Murray Boyles went 9 of 13 from the field, 0 of 2 from three-point range, but he had a double-double with 19 points and 11 rebounds in 22 minutes. The next highest leading scorers in this game, we're going to talk a lot about them today and be on the lookout for a story on them later this afternoon. Arden Conyers, Cam Scott, I say new kids on the block, but Arden Conyers was here last year. He just didn't play at all because he redshirted. Both guys finished with 16 points in this game. Arden went 6 of 7 from the field, 4 of 5 from three-point range, had a really solid day. He took over the game when he came in off the bench. And then Cam Scott came in off the bench too. 16 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 3 of 8 from 3. He was really solid last night. Again, the future is very bright for South Carolina. It feels like I think they are really destined to have another solid year. Not saying 26 wins by any means, but getting back to the NCAA tournament and going from there, absolutely. I feel like that should be the key for South Carolina this season. The goal, always get back to the tournament. Show that you have consistency, and I think this is definitely the team to do it. And then Jacoby Wright also came off the bench as the 6th man, 10 points, 3-6 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3. 2 of 4 at the free throw line, though. And that's the thing. I alluded to it earlier. South Carolina went 9 of 20 from the charity strike last night. That's good for 45%. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. This is something we saw a bit of last year where they struggled at the free throw line. It ended up costing them in some cases. And that's something that you take 11 points off the board. Yeah, it doesn't matter in this game, but say you do that again against, let's say you do it against Alabama in conference play when the Tide come here. That's a really great team. Final four team from last year. What if that happens again and you lose by 10 points or whatever? You're going to be kicking yourself in the butt. It is a reality that you have to get better at the free throw line. And again, it's basically a scrimmage. It's a glorified scrimmage. I get it. It's not the end of the world. Don't look too much into it. That's one of my things I talked about last night on in my story, and on the Fast Break Reaction, my post-game video, which I'll be doing after every game this season that I cover. And look, it's not a big deal, but they also went 30.6% from three-point range, which is 11 for 36. 36 three-point attempts last night. There were a lot of times in that game where South Carolina just, I don't want to say chucked up threes, but let's put it this way. They were given opportunities to shoot from deep. That's kind of the way the defense presented itself for South Carolina. And they took shots, missed on a lot of them. Zach Davis went 0-5 from three-point range last night. Like I said before, CMB went 0-2. Jamari Thomas went 0-3. There were a lot of guys who missed their three-point shots, and it wasn't exactly close. There were a lot of – we call them air balls if they don't even hit the rim at all. It's not the ball went under the rim or anything and just missed that way. It went over the hoop, and that's not a good look. Not a good look that you're missing those shots. Is it an end-all, be-all, just like I said before? No. But, they made 11 threes last night. And Cam Scott, Arden Conyers, you can win with those guys making shots. But you also need to see your guys out there making those shots. CMB, we don't know what we're going to get from three-point range yet. We hear so much about it. I know it's a really big question. Is he going to be able to shoot from three-point range this year? We'll see. But maybe that's not his play style this year. Maybe it is being that true four of playing inside and posting up, making nice plays that way. But Zach Davis, we had heard so much from him, LP, how much he has improved, how much his shot has gotten better, and all this talk. He went 0-5 last night. That is not – he looked like the Zach Davis we saw last year as a shooter. Great defensive player. A lot left to be desired on defense. Will that be the case again? I don't know. But again, it's one game. The regular season hasn't even started yet. There's going to be a lot of tape to break down from this game for the Gamecocks, and that is good. That is good. Again, they got tested last night, and that's the most important thing. So, again, it was just exciting to be back at I was about to say Williams-Brice Stadium, but I got football in my mind. Football on Saturday, but again, this isn't a football show, so we'll save thoughts for that. We're going to have a preview for the South Carolina A&M game with Corinna Porter up later today on Gamecock Central. So be sure to stay tuned for that as we talk a little bit of football later on. But with basketball at CLA, it was great being back there last night. It was awesome. Like, it has been a while since we've been back. To think about it, the last time people were at games at CLA, besides for a men's game at least, was the SEC regular season title potential, 1-2 battle against Tennessee. Now, obviously, that was the last time South Carolina lost at CLA, and it was a tough game, obviously, but it's great to be back there. I'm really excited for this season. I'll share some of my final predictions and stuff at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. I know we've been going on quite long here, but we are going to be joined by my good friend Elijah Campbell here in just a few minutes. He's reached out to me, told me he will be hopping on in just a few minutes, and then we'll be diving into some men's hoops. We'll try to talk about more about the general season as a whole, since I've kind of gone on about talking about last night in detail, pretty much covered everything by now. The final thoughts I will say from the game, my 3 thoughts. And I posted my 5 takeaways or 5 things we learned from last night's game on GamecockCentral.com, exclusive for GC subscribers. So if you haven't already, I implore you to go check that out. Really good story, I think, just breaking down it's a synopsis of the game last night. Free throw shooting's got to be better. Number one, it has to be better. Shooting in general from 3-point range too has to be better. Defense looked fine last night. And the other thing is, don't take this game too seriously. Worcester gave a really tough game last night, and to help me kind of talk about everything, Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game, who looks to be in studio. Is that Duncan? Looks like Elijah has frozen out for a second. Elijah, can you hear me? All right, we'll try to get him back on in just a second. I'm going to have him rejoin the stream here. But I will say for right now, kind of going on talking about, again, last night, like I said, my keys or my takeaways just need to be better from the free throw line. That is for absolutely sure. 3-point range, got to be better there too. And then also, like, again, it is just an exhibition game. I saw so many people on the message boards last night kind of, I guess, overreacting a little bit about what was going on last night. Like, the fact that they didn't play great in the first half kind of shows, like, oh, this team's got flaws, like they're not good, this and that. Like, huh? What are we talking about here? This is the same team that was down 34-17 at halftime against Wofford in their exhibition game last year. And they won that game and then went on to have a great year. So, again, I disagree with that take. Help me break down everything with this men's basketball team. Now we've got him. Can you hear me?
There we go. That's better.
Let's go. What's going on? Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game. How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. Yeah, fun. Nice to be back in a basketball arena last night. That was fun. Even if it is an exhibition game against a Division III school, that was a lot of fun to get back into the saddle last night. Be able to watch some basketball up close, and I'm really excited about this team here this year, Jack. I mean, I know you're pretty optimistic as well, so. I'm feeling pretty good now that we're kind of at the college sports equinox a little bit with football and basketball overlapping. So it's going to make life pretty busy for us here in the next month and a half or so. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, man. I can't complain.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited for the season, as I know you are. I kind of touched on the whole game last night before you hopped on, but I'll ask you real quick before we dive into the season as a whole. What were your 3 takeaways from the game last night?
My 3 biggest takeaways are, I'd say number 1, there's some work to do defensively. Last year, the team made, the bread and butter was being able to slow the game down and stop you on defense. There was some defensive possessions where the on-ball defense has to be better because if you're getting, beaten off the dribble against a Division III Worcester, there's no telling what Indiana will do to you when you go to Bloomington, right? I mean, there's some mistakes that are correctable. I think that's one thing that Lamont said last night was there was a lot of correctable stuff but there is some unacceptable part of the defense, and that was some of the on ball play wasn't great, and you're going to have to do a better job of chesting the ball and get in front of it and keeping your man separated from the rim. That kind of has to be better. I thought offensively for number two, offensively, I thought they were lethargic in the first half. There was a lack of energy. I don't think it's that they are inept on offense. They actually, I mean, you're scoring 1.12 or so points per possession. Surely, yes, has to be better against a Division III opponent, but you did that despite looking really lethargic for the first 20 minutes of the game. And they just didn't show a lot offensively in terms of sets, in terms of things that I think you're going to see in the regular season. So you can't really take away a ton from how the offense looked. It could have looked better, and I know Lamont would have liked to have seen it look a little better, but they picked it up in the second half, and they realized once they got into the second half, they got into a little bit of a groove. It worked. I don't think shooting more threes than twos against a Division III opponent is desired by any means. And they shot 36 3-pointers, and then I shot 33 twos. I don't think that's going to happen a ton. Last year in college basketball, only 4 teams shot more threes than twos on the season. I don't think they fall into that category. But there was a lot of what it tells me is they settled for a lot of jumpers, and it looked like they settled for a lot of more contested jumpers as opposed to trying to get to the rim. But number three, I think, in terms of a positive one, I think you're going to get a lot of production out of Cam Scott and Arden Conyers this year. I think Arden was one of those biggest question marks, and what he's going to look like in a redshirt year. No, he's not going to score 16 points and hit 4 threes, every game. His first 4 threes every game. I think that would be unrealistic to expect, but I think it is very realistic to expect that he is going to be a regular contributor, a key part of the rotation. And I think Cam Scott and his jumper are every bit as good as advertised. Again, defensive side of the ball. I think if he proves he can guard somebody one-on-one at the SEC level, I think he starts by January, just because his offensive tools are there. The athleticism is there. The shot making ability is there. And I think that's something anyone who's watched him at Lexington High School knows, that he's got those type of traits that are already power 4 basketball good at this level. I just think he's, maybe a couple of tooling on the defensive side of the ball away from being able to not just be a great contributor for this team off the bat, but be able to start by the time we get into SEC play.
Definitely. And I think it surprised some people that Cam didn't start last night, probably me included, to be honest, but maybe it was just wishful thinking to imagine him starting right out of the gate. And again, it's just an exhibition game, so maybe things will change, but I feel like Miles Studi's probably suited for that starting role. Just asking about the team in general last night. Again, I don't dive too much into or take too much away from last night's exhibition because, gonna be honest, man, I felt like South Carolina they played sloppy. They came out kind of sluggish. I feel like they weren't playing at the 100% capabilities that we know they can play at. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there was some concerns, I think, from free throw range or from the free throw line and then 3-point range. Do you worry too much about the fact that Carolina went 9 of 20 at the line and then only 11 of 36 from 3-point range?
I'm more concerned about the free throws than the threes. I think the threes will fall eventually. I think this year you'll probably have a better overall 3-point shooting team. Now, remember, last year they were great in the non-con and 3-point shooting, and then regressed dramatically once you got into conference play. Ultimately, South Carolina was 180th in 3-point efficiency last year, and there's about a smidge under 34%. So you're an average 3-point shooting team. I think this team can be an above average 3-point shooting team. But Cam Scott immediately makes you a better 3-point shooting team. Jamari Thomas is almost a 40% shooter. Miles Studi at his best is an almost 40% 3-point shooter. I think there's a lot of guys in this roster now that can make you like a really good 3-point shooting team, just based off the sample sizes we've gotten from them in the past, right? I think some of those threes will fall because a lot of them were open. I will say they did create a lot of open looks. And when you have Colin Murray Boyles inside, he's going to take up a ton of attention this year. And there's going to be some kickouts that are going to be available. I think you're going to see a lot of post-up action from CMB and a lot of doubles that teams are going to throw at him to try to make other guys on the perimeter beat you from an opponent standpoint. And I think those 3-point shots will be there. I think that'll be better over time. I'm maybe more concerned with how they missed some of the shots because there were about maybe 3 air balls in the first half. That has to be better, and maybe that's rust. Maybe that's just a lack of reps throughout, or like live game reps, because it's different once you get into practice and then you get into a game where the bullets are flying. So I don't find that to be as alarming as 9 for 20 from the free throw line, because that's repetition. That's muscle memory. That's something that, you can have an off game from the free throw line and shoot 65%. But if you shoot 9 for 20 and you make a habit of shooting that bad from the free throw line, it is going to cost you games. You remember what happened against Georgia last year, right at home? The most avoidable loss you had on the schedule, and you blew it at the free throw line. And that's something you cannot do. If you shoot like that, then yeah, you're going to have some problems this year. And this year, with the way the SEC is, one game like that against a team like Georgia can cost you a chance to go to the NCAA tournament because the conference is just too good, top to bottom.
Dude, I totally forgot about that Georgia game. That was nightmare fuel last year. That was scene of the crime material.
Yeah, it was.
Man, that was
bring the yellow tape. Yeah, that's what.
Bring the yellow tape. Bring the stretcher. That was awful.
All the morgue.
Yeah. On a happier, more positive note, let's talk about the season as a whole. There's a lot to be excited about with this team, obviously, and the schedule this year. I think from a fan, writer, viewer perspective, the schedule's a lot more interesting this year, right? You go to Assembly Hall in Bloomington and you play the Indiana Hoosiers, one of the blue blood basketball programs. And that's on a Saturday afternoon, right around the same time that South Carolina will be playing Missouri in football. So have the split screen ready to go.
Yes.
They go to Fort Myers for the tip-off tournament there during the week of Thanksgiving, during the week of Clemson. Xavier, you play the Sean Miller, the Hall's Chop House Bowl, whatever you want to call it. And then you play 2 days later, Michigan or Virginia Tech. So the games are going to be great. Obviously, you go to Chestnut Hill to play BC, Boston College. You're playing a Elite Eight team in Clemson this year at CLA. But how important is it this year to have these types of games to go through early in the season? Because we know SEC play is going to be a gauntlet.
Mightily. I would even stretch to say that it is significantly more vital this year, maybe, than it was last year. Last year, so let's go back to last year's non-conference slate. And you had the 332nd ranked non-conference strength of schedule. That would be looked upon normally as a bad thing. But it benefited last year's team because you're coming off an 11-21 season in which you dramatically needed to show that you knew how to win basketball games. You don't care against two, right? Because in the year prior, you lost to some bad basketball teams because you were yourself a bad basketball team. So the lack of difficulty in last year's non-con schedule wasn't a, what's the way to put this, wasn't a liability. It actually, I thought, helped you gain enough confidence, prove yourself that you can win games and you can take care of business. And then you ultimately saw this team be able to go into places like Thompson Bowling Arena and be able to beat some of the best teams in the country, whether it be on the road, beating Kentucky here, and locking up a team that was one of the 3 best offenses in college basketball with Kentucky here at CLA. I think a lot of that comes from the confidence you're able to build when taking care of business against teams you should take care of business against. This year, it's going to be different. This year, you're not going to run through the non-con schedule with 1 loss. If you do, then you're feeling a hell of a lot better about your chances at making the NCAA tournament without having to sweat it on Selection Sunday. Because let's go back. A win at Indiana is going to be big this year. Indiana will be a perennial top 25 to 35 team in college basketball. That's a really good roster they built, and Mike Woodson is coaching for his job. Xavier is a really solid team, but the more important thing in Fort Myers is I want to see them get to play Michigan, because Michigan, I think, is going to be a really good team.
They're going to be better this year.
Yeah, hiring Dusty May and bringing Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, who was the Ivy League Player of the Year, into that starting lineup. And Trey Donaldson will be the point guard for Michigan this year, the kid from Auburn last year. He's going to have a bigger role. I think that Michigan team, a win against them would look great on a resume. And yeah, Clemson lost P.J. Hall, but Ian Sheffling comes back. I read a tweet from, I think it was John Rothstein, that this Clemson team will at times go with a big lineup where the small forward 6'10" and have 3 guys 6'10" or above in the same lineup. That is a matchup nightmare. But
That's
if you're
a
able to go
problem.
into that and that's experience against a team that will play a completely different style of basketball. So this non-conference schedule in the year of our Lord 2024 is more built for you to be better in March, right? And it's built more to prepare you for a conference play as opposed to just getting wins under your belt and gaining confidence, whereas after a year like you had in Lamont's first year. So it's going to be a little different. And I like that it's a lot more challenging. I like that there are some true road games here. One thing that's been my biggest critique of teams like Kentucky and Duke and a lot of teams that ilk for years refuse to play true road games. And this team's not above playing true road games, right? So I think being able to go to Indiana is going to be a really great experience. Going to Boston College for the SEC ACC challenge is going to be solid. I don't think Boston College is going to be any good, but it's a true road game pretty far away from home, and it's a test. So I like this slate a whole lot more than last year, but I get why last year's was so soft. This one is going to be more of the proverbial iron sharpening iron.
Most definitely. And I'm really looking forward to this non-conference slate. I really wish I can go to Indiana. That would be
that'd be a dream.
that'd be so cool. Why do the basketball gods have to make this game on the same day as a football Saturday? That is
why can't they make why can't they put that in December? That would have been great.
Literally
Great
November
games in December all the time.
Like it's South Carolina's 4th game of the season, and I mean, look, it's their first legit test because before that, North Florida on Monday, SC State next Friday, and then on November 12th, it's Towson. So, look, not much really to be tested about early there, and then you don't have much time to waste because then you go to Fort Myers like 9 days later, and then it's off to BC after that to kick off December. So the schedule is definitely tougher, and then once you get into SEC play, I'm looking on KenPom right now. In SEC play, KenPom has South Carolina going 16-14 overall, which would not be good enough to make the tournament.
Nope.
7-11 in SEC play. There is a point here where I'm going to count it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 losses in a row is what KenPom has South Carolina doing from January 8th to February 8th. So a month stretch of losing 10 games in a row is what January 4th to the 8th. So my question is for you, SEC play is going to be tough this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see South Carolina replicating what they did last year? Because what did they go, 13-5?
13-5. Yeah, 13-5.
That's
good enough to tie themselves for 3rd in that league, man.
That's a hard mark to beat. I will ask the question. It's a 2-part question. Do you see them even getting anywhere close to that? If not, because I feel like it's really hard to replicate what they did last year. Again, 26 wins. That might be wishful thinking to repeat again this year. If they do, hats off to them. What's the benchmark wins they need to get to probably feel good about the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, in this league, you need to hover 500. I think with the right wins, you can maybe do it with 8 conference wins let's say 8 and 10. But again, it would take the right wins and a good collection of losses. And you look at the schedule right now, and there's really, when I look at the SEC, there are about 3 or 4 teams that I say you cannot lose to, maybe 5, right? You just cannot lose to because they'll either be bubble teams with you, or they're teams that I do not expect to be competitive for the NCAA tournament at all, like LSU and Oklahoma. To me, are complete non-factors in terms of making the NCAA tournament. If they do, then those coaches should be up for Coach of the Year. So you look at the games against Oklahoma. You play Oklahoma on the road in January 18th. You got to win that game. I don't love Oklahoma's roster. I don't love the makeup of that team. They lost a lot of veteran talent, and you have one game against them. Then you have LSU on the road as well. They're road games, yes, but you've got to be able to take advantage of those. Mississippi State and Ole Miss, I think, were teams that will be on the bubble with you. So you got to have wins against similar bubble teams. So you have to at least go over 500. And I'll throw Missouri in that as well, because Missouri is going to be better. Missouri was winless last year. They were the punching bag of the conference. They will not be this year. I can put a promise on that. They will not be. They added Tony Perkins from Iowa, who is an all Big Ten point guard. They got Mark Mitchell from Duke, who could have easily declared for the NBA draft as opposed to getting into the transfer portal. So they're improved, but they'll be a bubble team. So you're going to have to have a winning record against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, and you will get plenty of cracks at that apple because you got Mississippi State twice this year. And you go on, you look at Georgia. Georgia's one of those teams that I think is a little overrated. You got them twice this year. They're a little overrated because of the Asa Newell acquisition over the offseason, the 5-star freshman. I don't love the roster in terms of its depth. I think you're deeper than Georgia. But Georgia is a team that can potentially be on the bubble. Mike White, not maybe coaching for his job, but maybe trying to make a large step this year. You got to take advantage of those. And then you got to steal one like you did last year. You beat Tennessee on the road. You beat Kentucky at home. And in both of those games, you enforced your will on the defensive side of the ball to the point where they weren't fluky wins. Those were legitimate wins. I don't think they're going to win 13 games this year, Jack. But I mean, I think if you get to 8 wins with the right wins, you're in the discussion. You get 11 wins in this conference, I think you're in.
I think so too. I think 10 is probably where I see them getting to around that mark. Look, you're right, man. Like we could run through the schedule here and break down every game, but we don't have enough time for that. The point is, I
a lot
think
of games.
Ken Pom, I feel like, is very off on this thing. And again, that's the thing with national media and stuff. And no disrespect, they are great at their jobs, but when it comes to specific situations like this, where you see bracketology not even include South Carolina, the SEC media poll picked 11th in the conference, and Ken Pom, of course, really doubting South Carolina. There are stretches here where they are losing a lot of games in conference play. Like 7 wins in SEC play just feels a little off to me. Maybe 8, 9, 10. I think they get around 10. But, I mean, for anyone doubting this team, why do you feel like there is hope that they can be good again this year?
I think the hope is that you are going to, this year more so than last year, play or match up athletically. You're going to match up athletically a whole lot more with a lot of the teams this season than you did last season. I've been saying for a few months now, I've kind of like towed my own personal line of I don't know if you're going to be better than last year, but you'll be more fun to watch, and you're going to be way more athletic than last season. And if you can mirror even the defensive production where you're a top 45 Ken Pom defense and you are competent enough on offense to be able to knock down threes and have some spurt ability, if you will, then there's a lot of hope for this team. And I like the veteran leadership that they have because Miles Studi's played a lot of college basketball, right? Colin Murray-Boyles had a really good year last year. I think he's one of maybe the 6 or 7 best players in this league right now. And Colin Murray-Boyles more than likely will be a first-round pick in the NBA draft. I feel pretty good putting my name on that with the people I talk to that project that a lot better than I can also feel the same way. The way he finished last year, I think he's going to be the focal point of the team. And sometimes in these college basketball games, man, if it gets into a tight game, you got to have somebody who can be a closer. And Colin Murray-Boyles has been a closer on both ends. I just look no further than the Ole Miss game last year, where he was able to get buckets down the stretch and get one key block in the final minutes against a 7'4" player in Jamarian Sharp to help seal that game. It's one of the more remarkable plays of the year last year. So you have some high-end talent with CMB. You've got good role players. You've got solid depth. You've got good athleticism. You have guys who can guard multiple positions. And you have a weapon in Cam Scott, too. I think, like I said, if he is able to defend at this level, at the level required to stay on the floor for prolonged minutes, I think his spurt ability as a shooter and his ceiling is good enough to where if he maximizes that potential this year, can really be an all-freshman type player in the SEC. I genuinely believe that because I've seen what it looks like with him whenever he's on. So there's a lot of unknown about this team, but at the same time, you got to like the pieces that are in place and the culture that's been instilled. And yeah, the Ken Pom numbers like for preseason aren't great, but I can't work myself up to get too mad at a computer because that's all it is. And the computer needs a sample size. And right now, Ken Pom operates on 0 sample size. So a lot of it is guessing on continuity. Well, you lose 3 of your leading scorers from last year. Computers aren't going to like that. They're not going to like a lot of what you bring in because they have different sample sizes at different places. But I think this team will still make the tournament. They have first 4 vibes to me. I think they'll be one of the last teams in. They're going to be more squarely on the bubble. Last year, we didn't have to worry about it because you won enough really solid games during the regular season to make it to where your resume was so good that you weren't sweating it out on Selection Sunday. This year, it'll be a little more dramatic on that side, but I still think you get in because there's so many opportunities in the non-conference schedule and your conference schedule to pick up key wins. If you just avoid the bad losses, I think you're in a really good place to where you've got a resume lined up to where even if you do drop 12, maybe 13 games, the committee has shown precedent of favoring some of those teams that have a lot of losses if they show that they're quality losses and avoid the bad ones. I think that's kind of the line or the boat even that South Carolina is going to find themselves sailing this season's waters in.
Before I let you get out of here, we've got one general question for you. It's prediction time.
Yes, I love predictions.
I won't, unless you want to, I won't ask you to give like a specific record prediction for South Carolina because I feel like that's too hard for even anyone to really wager to guess at. But I will ask, what's like the target number of wins on the season South Carolina would probably get in your opinion? And do you see this team making the tournament? And if so, how far do they go?
So I think the target win for a team like this in a 30-game season in a conference as competitive as the SEC, which this will be the best year of SEC basketball in terms of projecting the league, right? Maybe ever. And Oklahoma doesn't bring you much coming in, but Texas does. And this is the most or I guess the SEC's best year in terms of most teams in the AP top 25. I could word that correctly. They had 9 teams, Jack, in the AP top 25 to start the season. 9. In the Big 12, a team that I think is the most top heavy, because the Big 12, I think, has 3 or 4 teams in the top 10, only has 6 in the top 25 in total. So I think a target win is 20. You get to 20-10, you feel really good about yourself. If you're 19-11, you're still feeling good, but there's a little bit of sweat. 17-18 can be the danger zone. Anything below 17, forget about it. You got to go to Nashville and win the SEC tournament and pull an NC State or a rabbit out of your hat or whatever miracle you want to drop in here. But I'd go for 19 because that's probably the most realistic, and I think they do that. I think they go 19-11. I think they're actually no, because the math's a little off because they play 31 because they'll play an extra game in Fort Myers. Well, let's go 19-12. I'll say 19-12 then. I say they go to 19-12. They're in the last 4 in, which will put them in the first 4 in Dayton, and I think they win that and get themselves into a game in the NCAA tournament. Probably another first round exit, depending on who they play, because obviously it's going to be hard to project that from here. But that's the type of realm that they're in. And for Gamecock fans listening to this right now, I mean, there's a lot of precedent of a team starting their tournament run in Dayton and making an Elite Eight. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but teams like that make those runs all the time. All you got to do in this sport, man, is get in, and anything can happen. And the right matchups can fall your way, and magic can just suddenly appear. That's why we love this whole event. So, I find this team being firmly on the bubble for a good chunk of the year, and I can see themselves playing that first 4 game in Dayton with an opportunity to try to do something special after that.
Most definitely, man. It's going to be a really exciting season to watch. Again, South Carolina tips off Monday. Regular season finally begins Monday night, 7 p.m. against North Florida. SEC Network Plus. It's going to be a great time, and we'll both be there. And we'll definitely be having a lot of these discussions throughout the season on 107.5 The Game, on Gamecock Central. Before I let you go, man, as I normally do with these shows, let you go ahead and plug in your socials and all that and what you're up to, where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for that first game, too, don't forget, North Florida, one of those 4 teams I alluded to that shot more 3s than 2s last year. The Ospreys let it fly. So if you are looking for a reason to come to the opener, not just to watch the Gamecocks, but it's an interesting test that they have going into the opener. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at @E_Campbell3. Listen to us on 107.5 The Game. I, myself, and Jay Phillips on from 3 to 6, Monday to Friday. Follow us on the Game TV, our YouTube page at 107.5 The Game, and where we do a lot of coverage there, especially after the games. I know we'll be making video, Jack, after the A&M football game on Saturday, where we report from the scene of the crime itself. And if you're watching this right now as a big Gamecock basketball fan, then we're going to be doing a lot of those from the scene of the crime at Colonial Life Arena as well. So just follow us on those platforms and look forward to talking ball with you all this year.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Hey, I appreciate you hopping on to do this, and I'll definitely be having you on again very soon.
Sounds like a plan. Good sir. Good talking to you, Jack.
All right,
My
thanks, buddy.
condolences on the Yankees, by the way.
Oh, man. I was trying to go the whole show without not talking about it. So I appreciate
I had to send you my T's and P's.
It's okay. Hey, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack. See you, buddy.
That was Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game. Really appreciate it. I'm going to plug in his social here. But I really appreciate him hopping on, man. Elijah Campbell, awesome man, awesome dude. Really, really good in having him on. Having perspective on the men's basketball season. That is going to be a great year, I think, for the hoops teams and women's too. So can't forget about them. Really appreciate my guests today. Markeshia Grant from South Carolina women's basketball, talking all things on that end. And then Elijah Campbell, 107.5 The Game, talking men's hoops. A lot of fun. Now, before we end the show here in a few minutes, it's time for my predictions. Men's basketball, because I cover this team. And again, I don't cover the women's team, but I enjoy talking about them because they're a lot of fun to watch. And I know Chris Wellbaum does a fantastic job writing about this team, covering them on the beat. We're going to definitely have him on a few times throughout the season with At the Buzzer, GC Live. Again, this is a weekly show. And as we get into basketball season, we will be finding a solidified slot time to do this show again. Last week was in the early afternoon window. This time it's on a Thursday on Halloween in the morning window. So we'll definitely be having some consistency here very soon. But again, if you're watching this after the show ends, you can watch on YouTube, or you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all types of streaming platforms. We'll be on there, and we'll be talking. You can listen back. So without further ado, let's get into my men's basketball predictions for the season. I see South Carolina. I can't exactly give a specific record, probably. If I had to give one, though, I'd say they probably end up about same deal as Elijah, probably about like the 20, 21 win mark. I feel like they're going to be tested a lot this year. I don't think it's going to be as peachy and rosy as it was last year. Feel-good story, Cinderella-type story. I think there's going to be a few more hurdles to cross this year. SEC play is going to be tougher, of course. I see South Carolina dropping a few games here and there. Non-con's really where you can make your money. You beat Indiana on the road. You go to Fort Myers and win a game there. You beat Clemson. We're talking about a great season. But I feel like South Carolina is probably going to lose a game or two in that scenario. I do think they beat Indiana, though. I think Indiana's got a solid team. But like Elijah alluded to, Mike Woodson's kind of coaching for his job at this point with the Hoosiers because they demand excellence. And they got a good roster. Very good. It's at Assembly Hall, but I think South Carolina can win that game. So on the whole, I do think South Carolina is probably going to end up being about a 20 to 21 win team. The lowest, I would say, is probably about 19. The highest is probably about 22. But for me, somewhere in that 20 to 21 range seems fair. I think they're going to make the tournament. I don't know if they're going to be a first four team in, like if they go to Dayton or not. It doesn't really matter. As long as they make the tournament, that's all that matters. I see this team getting to the tournament for sure. I think they make it out of the first weekend. Last year, they didn't. They lost in the first round against Oregon. I think this year they've learned from that experience. They got some pieces. How important is it to have a Nick Pringle that's been to the Final Four and started games there? And then obviously all the guys that are back from last year's team, they've been to the tournament. So they know what it's like now. It depends on the matchups and all that. So it's way too far to get ahead. But I think this team makes it to the Sweet 16. That's probably about it. And that is a fantastic season for this program. Again, do I think they're going to be perfect this year? No. Do I think there's going to be bumps in the road? Yes. My only word of advice I would give probably is that it's a long season. There are going to be losses on the schedule. Just implement that into your mind already. Look, I know we want South Carolina to win every game possible. That is just the fact of the matter. Same time, though, there are going to be hurdles. This is a tough season. This is a tough schedule they have. It's not as easy as it was last year in terms of non-conference play, where you only lose one game, and that's to Clemson. Everything else is really easy. You're testing yourselves this year, but it's going to serve you really well as you kind of get into SEC play. Then you get into going to Nashville for the SEC tournament, and then you play in March Madness. You are going to be very much battle-tested and built for the moment. And even if you have 10, 11 losses, like I know maybe the sky's falling by that point. Oh, no, they've lost so many games. In reality, that's probably good enough to make the tournament because you will have some really big wins on your schedule. If you're getting to that 20 to 21 win mark, you probably have a nice win or two in non-con play. And then you have some great wins from SEC play because the SEC is really good this year. So those are my predictions. I think South Carolina, once again, probably about a 20 to 21 win team this year. They'll make the tournament. They're getting to the Sweet 16, in my opinion. They'll make it through the first weekend. And we're going to be talking a lot about this team having a very good year once again. That is just my thoughts and predictions. But definitely share yours if you want to. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Would really appreciate it. That is going to do it for today's stream of GC Live at the Buzzer, previewing the men's and women's basketball seasons for South Carolina. We'll be back on here next week talking all things hoops. We should be breaking down South Carolina's first game of the year against North Florida. Again, that game is on Monday, 7 p.m. at CLA on SEC Network Plus. And then South Carolina plays SC State on Friday, November 8th next week. So this should be a lot of fun. I'll be at CLA on Monday. Won't be there on Friday, though, just because I'm going to be traveling to Vanderbilt for the football game, covering it. But we will be still having a lot of coverage going on. So be sure to stay logged into GamecockCentral.com for all live coverage and updates and stories and so much more. Videos like this, streams throughout basketball season. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. So until next week, I'll see you guys then, and have a great rest of your weekend, and happy Halloween. Stay safe out there, guys. See you again soon.